Hey there, single lady. Okay, here I am again this week, and I'm glad to be here today. So, what we're going to talk about this week is one big reason that men won't commit, and it might not be what you think. Hey, I'm Shana Schutte, dating and relationship coach for Single Over 30, and I help single over 30 women learn how to attract a trustworthy, marriage-minded man. So sometimes we women, we get into a place where like, okay, so this guy I'm seeing, like, why won't he commit? Why isn't he committing? It's totally confusing for us. And then sometimes we see other men around us. We're like, okay, well, why aren't those guys committing? Why aren't men committing? So sometimes it's not because a man is scared. Sometimes it's not because he's afraid of rejection. It's not because he's afraid of divorce. Sometimes it's just that he isn't ready. And for a man not being ready, one of the reasons that he may feel that he's not ready, that sometimes women can't relate to, is that he feels that he's not financially in the position that he needs to be in order to have a committed relationship. So we women sometimes, like I said, we don't get this, like we don't really understand this. But it's not a surprise that men think this way, because there's studies that show that even though we live in a time where women work, I work, lots of women work everywhere, and there's nothing wrong with that, that most men still feel a need to provide. So Shanti Feldhahn, she's an author and a speaker, and she wrote a book called For Women Only. And in it, she wrote, even if you make enough income to support your family's lifestyle, it would make no difference. That's interesting, right? Like no difference to the mental burden that a husband would feel to provide. Feldhahn also interviewed 1,000 men, and she found that providing isn't something that they feel they should do. It's something they want to do because it makes a man feel like a man. So even if you tell a guy that you're dating, if you say to him, hey, I don't need your money, I don't need you to take care of me, I can totally live on, what I make, because I've heard women say this, that a man is still going to feel responsible for you. So Feldhahn, she was once on a flight, and she sat next to a young guy who was single, and she struck up a conversation with him about this topic. And she asked him if he felt the burden to provide, even though there was nobody in his life at that time. And he said it's still the same. There is absolutely no difference, because he said you want to be in control of your life. And he explained to her, if I don't provide for myself and take care of myself, then someone else has to do it for me, and therefore I am not in control any longer. And so Feldhahn says that for most men, the drive to provide is so deeply rooted in them that almost nothing can relieve them of that sense of duty. It's how they have been wired. So she writes, it appears to be nothing less than an obsession. It's how men are wired. So being a provider is connected to a man's core identity, how he sees himself as a man, how he sees his worth. So to be a man means that he can provide, and providing is highly desirable, and it's a highly desirable goal that men shoot for. So this doesn't mean that you can't work. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't work. It just means that you are aware of this need that a man has to provide. It simply means that no matter what you do, or how much money you have, or how much money you promise to bring to the relationship or to the marriage or whatever, that a man is still going to feel like he needs to care for you. So maybe this is why men feel the need to be successful, and maybe it's also why when they have unemployment problems or challenges in their work, that these things really hit hard at the heart of a guy in a way that lots of times women can't really understand. So my husband often says that one of the biggest fears that a man has is the fear of failure. And when a man feels like he can't provide for that special woman in his life, it really strikes at that fear that he has of failure. So when I was single, there was a guy who was interested in me, and I was interested in him. And he had some setbacks in his career that were pretty daunting for him, and because of those setbacks in his career, it put him in a financial position where he said that he could not have a relationship with anyone until he got more straightened out financially. I was recently speaking with a man who married later in life, and he said one of the problems that he sees is that women, when we get older, he said they don't seem to need men. And maybe you're thinking, okay, Shana, well, wait a minute. Like, of course, like, I can take care of myself. I am an adult woman. I've been on my own for a long time. It's not necessarily that I want to carry the burden all by myself, but I've been forced to do it because I'm single, just because of my single status. So sometimes when we hear that, well, women don't seem to need men, we're like groaning, going, really? Like, I don't want to carry this all on my own. So what we have to do, though, in light of knowing how men think and how they feel about caring for that special woman in their life, is that we want to give room for a man to do those things for us. We want to give him room to provide for us, to treat us, to care for us in the way that would make him feel like a man. So that means that you allow your heart to be feminine and to be receptive. So men need to be needed, and he needs you to appreciate what he does for you and how he cares for you. So here are just a few ideas of some things that you can do practically in your dating life. These are awesome things that you can also put into play or into practice with the men that you know that you're not romantically involved with, right? Like a father or a brother. You can start to express appreciation for the men in your life who are just friends to you. So when you go out on a date, for example, and a man pays for a meal, you want to make sure that you thank him and you want to appreciate him for being generous. And if you have a more serious relationship, you can let him know, you know, thank you so much for caring for me and taking care of me and being generous. It's really nice to be dating or to be seeing or to be in a relationship with a real man. I really appreciate how you take care of me. I often tell my husband that I really appreciate how he's a real man for me, and I really appreciate how generous he is. His response is always, well, that's my job, isn't it? So a real man, and I consider my husband to be a real man will want to do those things for you. So it also means that you should never tell a guy that you don't need him, that you're fine on your own, even though that may be true, right? Even though you totally feel financially successful, you're able to carry your own load, and you don't need a man to do that for you. You can manage your own life. So even though these things are true, we want to hearken back to what we know about men, that men feel that burden, right, to care for the special woman that's in their life. So you want to remember that, because if you say, I don't need a man, then what's going to happen is he's going to think, well, there's no space in her life for me to be the hero for her. So you want to make sure that you give a man room to do that for you. I was coaching a woman one time, and she was telling me that on her very first date, she lets the men know that she's on the date with, I don't need a man, right? Well, that's sort of like if a man said, I don't need a woman. I don't need a woman's love. I don't need her compassion. I don't need her care. I'm a man after all, right? If a guy said that, you'd be like, well, those are some of my best gifts, and if you don't want those things from me, then you're just going to reject me, right? It's going to make you feel rejected. And so it's the same way with a man. We want to make sure that we don't say to a guy, hey, I don't need a man, because really what he's hearing is, I don't need you, because you're rejecting the very best gifts that he has to offer. And when I asked this woman that I just mentioned why she said this, she said she wants to make sure that the guy knows that she's not taking advantage of him. So that's something that would be made clear over the course of the relationship, and as she gets to know him, right, as she practices grace in the relationship and helps out financially, whether it's when they go out on a date, she decides to pay for dessert, or she decides to leave the tip, or whatever. But a man needs to know that he can be your hero, because remember, it's how he has been wired. It doesn't mean you become a pansy. It doesn't mean that you become weak. It doesn't mean you can't do anything for yourself. It simply means that you create space in your relationship and in your dating life for a man to be a man for you. Same thing like with a guy opening the door for you, walking behind you, or walking on the outside of towards the road so he can protect you. Whatever those things are, you want to give a man space to be a man. All right, so I hope this has really been helpful for you, and I hope you have been encouraged by it. It's not like, I just want to remind you, it's not like you're being weak. It means you're being gracious. It means that you are understanding how a man needs to be spoken to and the things that will make him feel good about himself, in the same way that you would like to feel good about yourself by the way that he treats you. All right, I hope this has been helpful. And if you haven't yet, head on over to singleover30.net/howtolove. That's TOLOVE, How to Love, to check out my free class that is going to help you love like you've never been hurt. So if you have been in relationships and you have gotten burned and that's made you gun shy, you're afraid to open up your heart, or maybe when a guy starts to get close to you, maybe you start to freak out and you feel like you shut down or just start spinning in your mind. If all these things describe you, or if you feel like you can't feel anything, even like you start to get in relationships, you feel numb, right? You're just not interested in anybody after a bad breakup. I want to encourage you again to check out this class. It's How to Love Like You've Never Been Hurt. Again, head on over to singleover30.net/how-to-love, HOWTOLOVE. All right, see you next time, and remember that the dream that you have to love and be loved is possible. Bye-bye.